Alright, time for another draftphysics.com, debatephysics.com also, video presentation. So something a little bit different. I don't know how much physics will be in this, but so it's a Brian Keating interviewing Don Lincoln. So I did have a little bit of a chat in a in a comment section with Dr. Lincoln. And but I couldn't persuade him to, man up and, recognize that science has made mistakes, and there's mistakes in the video he did. I have sent emails offering them the $2,000, and they just aren't responsive to those requests. so, um, so that's about it. I think I've mostly disagreed with him on the double slit experiment, but he might have I don't think he's done a kinetic energy video. But anyway, I thought I'd just play this because there's just so much about it. So it's kind of an obnoxious conversation among, these elitists, these ivory tower people. And they're going to tell everybody else what the truth is and pretend they're smarter than everybody else and all that crap. So I just thought I wanted to start with just the introduction by Dr. Brian Keating. And it's like he's talking to 10-year-olds, and it's just so patronizing and wooey. I mean, it just demonstrates that these people aren't scientists. They're little girls.
For centuries, humans have gazed up into the night sky, questioned the nature of matter, energy, fields and forces, and questioned our place in the cosmos.
All this hype.
Once rooted in theology and philosophy.
So yeah, it's still rooted in theology. There's no such thing as philosophy, frankly. There's just science. There's just attempting to make accurate statements about reality. That's what philosophy would be. And philosophy, just generally speaking, covers subjects where you can't do a physical experiment. Okay, you have to understand a concept, like the meaning of suffering, for example.
These questions can now be explored through the lens of high energy particle physics.
High energy particle physics. We strive to.
We strive to understand the ultimate laws of nature and discover the final theory.
So all this, it's just such hypey talk. So obviously it makes some sense to recognize they could just say, it makes logical sense that the small universe evolved into this more complex universe, and evolution involves reductionism. It actually involves this idea that the particles, the pieces, aren't more complicated than the thing they're making. A wheel isn't more complicated than the car, kind of thing. And that the universe, would have to be made out of really simple shit.
Theory of everything. But does it even exist?
We will find out that Einstein's theory of gravity actually ties together to these quantum forces.
So he says we will, and no, it won't. Bent space is outside the realm of the rest of the, energy universe, in the sense that it's a fake source of energy. It's, it's not made out of the same stuff that the other energy is made out of. It's made out of real things like photons. And you're pretending gravity is some kind of, you don't need any pusher.
And that's the theory of everything.
But despite our progress, there's so much we don't know. And there's so much hype surrounding the issue.
Yeah, and you're part of the hype, and just a part of the whole goddamn thing that's wrong with it. All this goddamn baby talk.
Many of which comes from past guests on the podcast. Luckily, though, today our guest is someone who embraces this uncertainty and is a driving force in the experimental quest to understand the cosmos.
Oh, bullshit. Okay, so it's all this accelerator crap. That, again, is all based on mv squared having something to do with reality, which it doesn't.
Meet Don Lincoln, a renowned experimental physicist and the host of the Fermilab YouTube channel, who's here to discuss his latest book, Einstein's Unfinished Dream.
Right, so anyway, it was supposed to have a picture of Einstein on it, and it's obviously kind of a boring cover. And Einstein obviously wasn't big on all this cosmological crap. He was pretty much the small universe physics, but whatever. I'd always hate when they do this, just because this big universe stuff, it just wasn't his focus, you know. So anyway, so I'm going to jump ahead to the part that I found silly. So the idea is that yes, Einstein was trying to find a better theory than the silly, spooky action bullshit, and it wasn't like he was looking for one thing. I mean, it was just this idea that there's a simpler mechanism that ties all these things together. Maybe Einstein actually figured out that all the forces move the speed of light, and therefore there probably has to be some kind of unifying idea behind that fact, that it's not a coincidence that bent space moves at the speed of light, and maybe we should just call it the speed of force. That would be a first unifying principle, would be to recognize the difference between the energy thing, force, and the thing it affects, matter, and make a nice clear distinction between matter and force. And understand that what happens with force is that it basically moves from one form of a material object to another form of a material object, that it basically is attached, okay, like a like a parasite, like a flea, it jumps from one carrier to another. That might be a nice little unifying concept. All right, path to discovery nowadays. So that's.
Let's talk about water.
Let's talk about water.
Let's talk about water.
Let's talk about water.
Fuck you.
Let's talk about
Fuck you.
Beyond which our current theory is incapable of looking.
And when we think about some of the open questions, again, people tend to be attracted to. I know you get these emails. You mentioned it in the book.
You must too.
So they're laughing, ha ha ha. They get emails from people saying things like, well, that doesn't work. I have a better idea. Okay. So this is a problem. I'm not saying that 99.99999, it might be a very big, you might have to do a lot of nines before you get to 1 in 1,000, 1 in a million, whatever the number might be, of these people who actually have a valuable insight. Okay. But it's with this attitude, obviously, that nobody could ever break in. So even if there was a good idea out there, this attitude makes it impossible. So this pigeonhole-y, profile-y bullshit isn't very scientific. Scientists should be saying, let's figure out a way to filter this stuff so it can be appreciated. If there is something valuable, we don't miss it. That's the whole idea of science, is not to miss important details.
Yeah, so, Professor Keating, I have this new theory that I'm hoping you'll help with, because I'm not good at math, but when we win the Nobel Prize, I'll share some of...
So I wonder how many emails they get pointing out some criticism of some theory they're popularizing that is critically flawed, and they pretend that's, somebody suggesting some monetary deal. And again, I've overtly just said, look, I'll pay you for your time. Just put a reasonable number on it.
The prize money with you. Oh, okay, thank you very much. And then they'll always say, as you say in the book, they'll say, well, Einstein wasn't good at math. Einstein flunked out.
Okay, so that's more stuff that, people don't... Obviously, that was stated by physicists, okay? So they told the story wrong. And so a few people might have heard it and said, oh, yeah, that's a real story. But then, since then, I've seen plenty of documentaries that, make it clear that Einstein didn't fail school.
Make short work of that. We don't have to go into that pernicious...
Well, you don't have to call it all pernicious, though, because it's just a factual truth that his wife helped him with math while he was still married. And, what's his face? Not Planck, but the other guy, back in Germany, helped him when Eddington challenged him to, explain the precession of Mercury. So it just is a fact that Einstein did need help with his math. Or whatever, who cares?
It's misattribution of Einstein's genius. But there's so much.
So again, it's Einstein's genius. He, I'd argue that the Brownian motion thing was really good in terms of deducing the existence of atoms and kind of adding more evidence to that argument, and then the photoelectric effect, recognizing that there's kind of a clumpy relationship between energy and actions, but that wasn't made extremely clear beyond the fact that most physicists interpret that to Einstein saying that blue light has more energy, when the better argument is that blue light has a smaller frequency or period, which means it's more likely to push something faster.
Actual science, to do, but
because it doesn't slow down is the point. If you hit it fast enough, it doesn't have time to slow down. So if you hit it the first time and it moves, and you hit it again before it slows down, it'll retain a much higher velocity. So red light loses too much energy to drag, where blue light conserves more of the energy, and therefore the electron has enough energy to leave the atom.
Before we get to, and at the end, very end, we'll take questions from my audience, and I included some that you may scoff at, I may scoff at, but these people are very serious. I mean, I get books mailed to me, I get gifts, I have shapes, 3D printed object. It's incredible. But when you hear,
you ought to do a show just on that. Then I mean, what's the big deal? I mean, if these are arguments you're just going to dismiss, fine. So what's the big deal about saying, look, this is how people communicate with me, and but I don't, I doubt they're, like this is a daily event. I think that's just bullshit.
People like that, they're often met with some level of derision from professional scientists.
Some level? No, that's all it is. Okay, and it's encouraged by science, not discouraged. And then you end up with a bunch of sycophants to your bullshit that just show up on videos and put in moron or some other kind of crap instead of making any kind of rational argument about how they said something wrong. So again, you won't be interrogated. So you're not going to answer my question. Do you really believe it takes 25 times the fuel to spin something 5 times as fast? Do you really believe the Eddington experiment was good science when he admits in his own journal he got 10% of the data quality? 10%? And he says right there, I wouldn't stake my life on these results. That deserves a New York Times headline saying Einstein proven right. And then you've never even attempted the experiment from space with 400 times resolution. You're going to tell me there's a good reason why you haven't done a 5-minute experiment in space? No, there's no good reason.
But then we have people like past guest Michio Kaku on the podcast who will say, quoting Stephen Hawking, that once we have the theory of everything, we'll know the mind of God, which is what Hawking said about.
Well, why would we want to even phrase anything like that? So again, why would a scientist even say that? But there's power in knowledge, so getting right answers is really a good idea. So then you can draw right conclusions. If you have right information, you can see where the information points and draw right conclusions. And all you people are doing is trying to prop up a religion. You're not trying to find the truth, which all the evidence really points to, the truth being what Descartes discovered, and a lot of others, is that it's just a machine. That's all it is. It's just a machine. There's no God in it, there's no creator in it, there's no intelligence in it except as a byproduct, not as an initiation.
Is it really overblown, this hero worship of the lone genius working in obscure...
So he changes the subject entirely, which is weird. But anyway, so this is the part that, it's just I'm that the our whole history has Aristotle. It's all names. It's all Plato. It's all names. It's all individuals who saw something other people didn't see, and were able to invent something like the telescope, or do something that changed the game. And they did do that. They changed the game, and there's very little evidence that it ever took any kind of collaboration between numerous people to make one of those discoveries or to create one of those inventions. So you're kind of stuck with the fact that, yeah, one brain has to put it together and see a way to twist it in a new way and make something of it. And it's very unlikely that two individuals are going to be able to sit there and turn something and see the same change, see the same thing. One brain will see it, the other one won't.
Until they make their big breakthrough and fame. And, is that really a path to discovery nowadays, if it ever was?
Well,
So I'm just saying, what other, it was one guy pretty much who invented the blue LED, okay, through his diligent idea of seeing it and trying to make it happen and not giving up. And, that's the blueprint. So I just said, you're stuck with it. There isn't any other choice. So this whole idea that you're going to incrementally get little tiny pieces of the truth, no, it comes in clumps, just like energy. It comes in clumps.
there's a lot hidden in that. It's partially a question and partly a commentary on our mails received. And yes, I have actually right over there a bookshelf full of books and letters and so forth. And
Yeah, so it'd be great to actually for us to see some of that. There's somebody that should be documented. That this is what the shit people talk, if that's all it's worth, just a show. But I really don't think you're bludgeoned. All right. And I still think you can, if somebody offers you $2,000 to engage in a conversation about the subject, you should take that seriously.
the bad thing is these are passionate, well-minded people. They have a fundamental misunderstanding of the.
Yeah, so this is the dodge, right? No, you're the ones with the fundamental misunderstanding based on the fact that you really don't care about evidence being really hard and true and complete. And so you just have to see the shadow of a Sasquatch, and you're right on the Sasquatch bandwagon. You're not asking for any DNA evidence. You're not asking for fingerprints. All the guy has to do is look like a murderer, and you'll convict him of murder.
Difficulty of the problem. They think that driving home in their car they'll get some idea and it'll just pop into their head, and the fact is.
Yeah, and so Einstein's miracle year. So it's exactly how it works. Ideas pop into your head, and and they trigger some secondary thought and a third and a fourth, and it leads you in a direction, and it basically can be quite insightful.
For at least the last century, really, really, really smart professional people have been thinking.
So again, more nonsense about really, really smart professional people who haven't bothered to be correct and accurate in a damn thing they say. So you keep talking about waves and the two-slit experiment. You never point out that, in water waves there is no single slit pattern. Okay, it doesn't happen. All right. And in light, it certainly does happen. And then you have the single impediment, which kind of just blows up the whole wave nonsense anyway, because obviously it's just about surfaces. There are two surfaces. You measure the distance between the two surfaces, and it tells you what the damn pattern is. So it's clearly point sources being created at the surfaces. There's no mechanics for the creation of waves where the wave center is on the surface. So clearly your math doesn't match your fake drawings and your simplistic description. I mean, to say things like, every time there's an on-off pattern, we know that's interference. And you don't finish that bullshit by saying something like, on-off is the simplest pattern you can create in the universe. So I guess I'm full of shit if I'm going to argue it always means interference. That would be ridiculous to say something that's silly when it's the simplest pattern a mechanism can make.
Thinking about this, and they failed. And it's an extraordinary conceit to think that.
So it's somebody's conceited if they think you're wrong. Isn't that convenient? And especially in this atmosphere, again, where the evidence is obscure and non-tangible. So we have to believe them. They say there's quarks inside of a proton. Well, they can't show us the evidence because it's some sort of digital media crap. They can't convert it into anything that even looks like an image. They can't convert it into anything that even looks like something mechanical. It's all some sort of abstract mathematical horse crap that doesn't have any connection to reality. And then they say there's antimatter, and they show us a picture from 1956 of something they just said was a positron. So, other physicists did the same experiment, and they saw the same thing, and they called it a proton. And all of a sudden, one of them said, I'm going to call it a positron instead because I read Dirac's paper. What the fuck? And that's the best they can do. That's the only picture they'll ever show you of a positron. There's no other picture. An old 1956 picture.
That all of a sudden is some person who's, I really do believe is well-meaning, is going to have some fundamental answer. And I think it's just because...
Yeah, you don't have the fundamental answers, and that's the whole point. You pay no attention to the contradictions. Again, the energy duality is so obvious. I mean, you have a simple device, a lever, and all it can see is momentum. Okay? No matter what I put on it, all it sees is momentum. It can't see anything else at all. All right? There's no kinetic energy as far as it's concerned. And then I can use a ballistic pendulum to catch a bullet. And what do I collect of the 2,000 joules the bullet has? I collect 2. And if I collect any more than 2, I ended up making free momentum, which would be preposterous. So how does any of this fit with a secure, rock-solid, we've proven theory? You haven't proven any of this crap. And again, once 1/2 mv squared is torn down, which it has absolutely no credibility as a theory. I mean, the Mythbusters crashed the cars. There's no 4 times the damage in the 100-mile-an-hour crash compared to the 50-mile-an-hour. And we could do those all day long, and they're not going to come out any other way. So, I mean, it's junk science. It's a fable. And it's the foundation of all your abstractions. So all this other crap you invented is all invented out of this silly notion that because something's going fast, it means it has more energy or force behind it. When, no, it just means that fast things can break things easier. It doesn't mean they have more energy.
They don't have the training that we professional scientists...
So again, the training in what? What training? So show us that, okay? The lectures are all public. What the hell? Where was the lecture training people to be careful and don't be fooled? Professor Lewin has a famous air cart experiment where I can demonstrate the masses aren't what he says they are. Did he do a lecture after that talking about how, well, you got to make sure you're honest and don't finagle the experiments? Nature can't finagle momentum, but scientists can finagle experiments. So be careful. Don't be a finagler. No, nothing like that. There's no science education that has anything to do with discipline, recognizing you shouldn't jump the evidence. They don't even talk about weak evidence because all of their physics is based on weak evidence.
Do to be introspective, and the first reaction to any cool idea I have is, okay, how can I disprove it? That's what I mean. That is the thing that makes you a professional scientist.
Oh, silly talk. There's nothing wrong with it. Obviously, you're going to fact check it. You're going to sit there and say, okay, well, does it work in this circumstance? If I put it in water, does it work? If I fry it on the oven, does it work? You're trying to see if there's some vulnerability it has. Does it include everything it needs to include? And frankly, it doesn't need to include everything. It just needs to be, it needs to have enough, it needs to resolve more questions than it raises. I guess that would be a a standard. But who cares about all this crap? The point is that once you present it, it will be challenged and it will be tested. So that's fine. And again, where was any of your theories tested? You never even tested the double slit by putting photographic film on the sides to see if any photons went at 90 degrees. Didn't even do that test. Again, you didn't redo the Eddington test. You didn't do it from space. I mean, you just go through. You never even measured 4 pounds dropped 1 foot, 1 pound dropped 4 feet. You never even measured. So don't talk to me about how scientists learn to be credible. They learn how to be incredible. They learn how to make fake claims and be arrogant and pretentious enough to fool people with them.
Is to figure out, you have a cool idea, and, honestly, you want to kill it yourself before you open your mouth and tell.
So I'm just saying, so yeah, it's all bullshit because you don't kill other people's ideas and you don't even defend your own. You just talk shit.
Some other scientists and have them kill it, and then you feel like an idiot, But historically, certainly.
Historically, again, so you haven't paid any attention to the history. I mean, Leibniz just said it. He didn't prove it with any experiment or any evidence whatsoever. He just said mv squared. All right? He didn't cite any experimental evidence. None. And then de Châtelet in France does a couple of little goofy experiments that have no scientific credibility, really. They're just show experiments, and they fool everybody. But that's it. There's no evidence of this statement, this frickin' argument you're making that I must believe if I'm a reasonable person, that every time a gun goes off, 2,000 joules goes one way and 2 joules goes the other way, in complete contradiction to Newton's third law that you think is actually a law. I mean, it's a law over what? What is it a law of? Nothing. If 1/2 mv squared is the quantity conserved, where's the evidence of the conservation?
The American society, we venerate like the lone hero. I mean, there's something in our culture, a mythology of the frontier trailblazer.
Yeah, it's just a fact that there is one person on Earth who runs faster than everybody else, and we make them into heroes. Okay, there's one guy whose batting average is the highest, we make him a hero. One guy hits more home runs, we make him a hero. Yeah, that's the pattern, all right? But it just happens to be a fact that this exceptionalism only happens. It always just gravitates to some peak. And that's just the truth of it. And clearly the idea that there's some sort of great deal of collaboration that goes on, it's usually just father and son, or, like the Wright brothers or something. It has to be some circumstance where the people working on it have some kind of ability to be seeing the same thing.
The Lewis and Clark, or the Columbus. We talk about Columbus, and of course he did very bad things. But when I was a kid, he was a hero, right?
Well, whatever. I mean, even this is stupid. I mean, Columbus is the guy who had to persuade, the Queen to spend the money. So that's why he's going to be the hero, is because he got the whole project off the ground.
He was the guy who discovered the New World. Never mind that there were 3 ships with, a couple hundred guys on it. I mean, he didn't do.
Yeah, who didn't do anything to get the project funded.
Let alone, but we remember the name. Now, Einstein was a singular individual in the sense that he really did have some really brilliant insights. Of course, he had some that were incorrect.
Yeah, unfortunately, he had them all when he was, 20 whatever, and he didn't hit the old insightful thing again, beyond the insight of being able to smell garbage. And so he was at least capable of having the insight that you're all talking wooey shit, and I really don't want to have anything to do with this religion you're making out of physics.
Under his intuition on quantum mechanics was perhaps faulty.
Yeah, no, it was perhaps 100% reasonable to say, why are you creating all this goofball nonsense? The universe isn't run on goofballs.
And, that's not to denigrate his memory. But
Well, you just did, but whatever.
the truth is, he did have a few really good thoughts, and that's
Yeah, so again, but you're not really going to explain those. And again, I'll say his good thoughts were, the photoelectric effect and the Browning motion, really good insights. Pushed the ball forward. Bent space, time, silly nonsense. He should have just said to himself, spooky action. The nothing is bent, and it pushes things with momentum. I don't think so.
possible to happen. But, I mean, he was also a man in his time. He would probably not have had the success he had he not, had there not been, people.
The bullshit Eddington experiment right there. I mean, that made him just a fact. And it was a bullshit, overhyped piece of crappy evidence. Just a fact. It's a piece of crappy science. All right? And it's the sad truth is that Eddington was well respected as somebody who was very methodical and very careful. And it's kind of disgraceful, okay, that he would allow that thing to get so out of control, where this became some absolute proof of something when it's clearly not.
Well, his predecessors 50 years before him, understanding even the question. I mean, sometimes understanding the question is half of getting the answer. And at any rate, I think it's more about, at least American and perhaps Western culture, that we simply venerate that one.
So again, it has nothing to do with Western culture. I mean, come on. It's everywhere. Idol worship kind of bullshit.
Leader, the brilliant one, who's has the answers. And the reality is that's overblown. And especially now, it's becoming harder and harder.
So says you. Again, it's always, in my opinion, the way brains work. The insights have to come in one object. You can't make brains work with symmetry. So they can't work constructively. There's destructive interference between brains, and it's going to be very difficult to, turn something and have two people see the same catch, the same trick.
Which is not to say that someone out there might not have a brilliant idea that does move the goalposts.
Right, and you'll never listen to it.
I mean, it could very well be that some new idea will change how we think about the world, but to go from there to we have all the answers to all questions.
It won't be that way. The point is they'll find something more elemental. They'll find something simple that you've missed, that you broke. Momentum was simple. It was so frickin', it worked. 1,000 atoms going 1 mile an hour is the same as one atom going 1,000 miles an hour. The same amount of force is pushing them in these little discrete bits of force, like Einstein would argue. It's so conservational and mechanical and sensible. This idea that somehow velocity increases energy means that energy isn't something. That somehow it's some sort of magic bit that somehow gains more energy. The faster you make something go, the more its force bits grow. Some kind of crap. I mean, it doesn't make any sense at all. It just breaks all of the wonderful flowing continuity of a circular momentum system, of a system where you just say follow the momentum. Heat is momentum. It's the movement of material objects. That any material object moving counts as momentum. And if you just understand that, then you just follow the momentum.
That's a heavy lift.
Yeah. He speaks of hubris that is only attributable to physicists like us.
Whatever. So they always joke about their own arrogance and obnoxiousness. yeah, really, but they really are insidious, pompous douchebags, obnoxious, arrogant shit talkers. All right, so that's probably enough. Yeah, there really there's really no rational physics in here. It's a little bit about a muon collider, which is just hilarious stuff, really. These are all particles that, like, yes, they even concede, the muons only last 1/1,000,000th of a second, or whatever it is, and yeah, we're going to collide them. It's hilarious. Like they can't even make one in the first place. You'll never see any of these things. You'll never see them actually doing anything. It's all quantum computing bullshit. All right. They have the gun, but it never shoots a bullet. All right. Just talk. All right, so that should be enough, I think. I saw the video and it was just sort of annoying because they all say this kind of stuff about, you just can't open the door a tiny crack for the cranks because they're just too cranky and there's too many of them and we can't do anything and it's just so dismissive. If you're not part of the 25-person club of socially connected physicists, then you're not allowed to have an idea. It's pretty much how it works. Maybe there's 1,000 of them. And that's it. They get to tell everybody else what the truth is. And that's bullshit. Especially when they're uninterrogatable. When they never do a town hall. They never subject themselves, to, all the many real arguments that they've never answered, the real points, the real issues. So anyway, enough said. So, till the next time and such, when we'll go back to talking about physics.